One of the most divisive ARMS discussions is over which game mode is the worst. No matter how many people I ask, it seems as if each game mode is someone's least favorite, leaving me with no definitive answer. Let's start this video with a bit of a spoiler though. Through the years, two modes in particular stand out to me as being worse than the rest. So a while back, I held a poll asking you guys which mode was the worst between Skillshot and 3-player free-for-all. I would consider these modes to be the worst in the game for reasons I'll explain later in this video, but because every mode seems to have its fair share of critics, today we're gonna take a look at not just Skillshot and 3-player, but every other game mode to see where each one fails and where each one succeeds, while suggesting potential changes to make them more enjoyable. So, starting off with 4-player free-for-all. This one is actually one of my favorite modes, and dare I say, one of the best modes in general. A bit ironic considering I absolutely despise its 3-player version, but honestly, the extra player makes all the difference. While a 3-player match creates an obvious imbalance of players, 4-player acts like a mini battle royale of sorts. At the beginning of the match, you lock onto an opponent and fight them till one of you gets KO'd, while the other pair does the same. This ends with the winners of each pair fighting each other till one player is left standing, or until the clock hits 0. These unspoken rules are usually never broken, and it creates a really fun time. It feels rewarding to play this, as the better you do on your first fight, the more health you'll carry over to the second fight. I've actually never heard someone say they don't like this mode, so this mode is fine as is, no need to change it up. It really works as a nice twist to normal 1v1 fights. I can't really say the same about team battles however, and don't get me wrong, I do enjoy them, but the issue with this mode is pretty clear. And yes, I am talking about the wires connecting both teams. The wires are the cause of many of our frustrations with the mode, as you kinda have to deal with your teammates every move. You can't really split apart from them without having it feel like you're being dragged around. They also limit movement significantly on bigger maps as well. Try it out if you don't believe me. But the worst thing the wire does is punishing both players on the team if one gets grabbed, and I really don't get why it was designed like this. Both players getting knocked for a grab often feels like a chore to deal with, and overall just makes the gameplay flow of this mode much slower. So I would say our fix here is more than clear. This mode's problems are all thanks to the wire, so naturally I propose to cut it off. It would seriously improve this mode like you have no idea. This would make having a teammate not feel like a detriment. And if the developers fear player confusion, they can just simply give them colored aura. Overall, my verdict on this mode is that it isn't the worst mode in the game either, but I wouldn't rank it as high as others. Moving on, Headlock Scramble is another fight-centered mode, but it isn't really much different to a normal fight, which makes it automatically good, funny enough. This mode is crazy fun, and it gave birth to the best glitch in ARMS. Playable bosses in games are one of my favorite things, and they really nailed the powerful feeling of using Headlock without creating a huge disadvantage for one of the players, since it doesn't feel like whoever picks the mask first automatically wins the game. They got a lot right with this mode, so I don't propose any changes. I do want to mention however that what I said about 4-player matches and what I'm going to say about 3-player matches will apply to Headlock Scramble as well. And on the topic of Headlock, Versus Headlock is also one of the best modes in the game. My only problem with this mode is the amount of wasted potential there is here. This mode proves how fun a raid battle mode would be in ARMS. So imagine fighting supercharged boss versions of the cast, like a modified Springtron that can deal damage with his EMP, or even maybe a boss version of Coil with a lot more HP and armor. These are all good ideas that would make the mode even more fun than it already is. Now, I do admit variety does exist in the form of which character is being controlled by Headlock, but the boss dynamic and strategy goes relatively unchanged. I get that this mode is called Versus Headlock, but come on now, what this mode needs is more bosses in general. Like I said though, this mode as is remains one of the best in the game. Now that we've talked about the fight modes, let's take a look at the sports modes. While I don't outright dislike any of them outside of Skillshot, their flaws can be more apparent than the ones in the fight modes. Let's start with B-Ball. I'm honestly really indifferent about this mode, so due to that, I asked people in the SNG Court to help me out with this one, as I don't really have any strong feelings for it. By the way, if you guys want to join my Discord, you are welcome to do so by joining with the invitation in the description. It's a nice place to interact with me and other ARMS fans. So about V-Ball, here's what I found most interesting. Tep says that this mode encourages punch spamming, something that we'll also talk about in Hoops, and also that the ball doesn't really react much to hits. Springboy says that this is the only mode that he's experienced lag with, and usually because of arm choice, he feels like he's getting the short end of the stick when it comes to hitting the ball. I really share both of these thoughts, as they are genuine issues that plague the mode, especially the arm choice thing. Anything that isn't a linear fast arm falls short, and it genuinely seems as if the weapons were an afterthought when making all of the sports modes, especially the heavy arms. In b-ball specifically, you need speed to be able to consistently hit the ball before it touches the ground while competing with your opponent, so the gameplay design completely nullifies heavy arms from being viable because of how slow they are. And it's not like your arm choice is compensated because every attack hits the same in v-ball, and if you want an easy example of what I said, just look at the bouncy arms struggle to hit the ball. Regarding the second point, lag in this game mode is absolutely the weirdest. There are no words to describe it, just watch this small clip. Finally, the last problem this mode has is Arms' camera. If you've watched my Arms is Broken video, you know what I'm talking about, but if you need to get the gist of it, Arms' camera really sucks at tracking fast objects and stuff directly above you, something that will commonly happen in v-ball. I wouldn't say this makes or breaks the mode as much as the other points I mentioned, but Arms in general needs a better camera system. My fix for this mode is to have all the arms and attributes deal different effects to the ball. I think it would create further strategy than what we currently have, while validating a lot of the unpopular options. This mode is inoffensive at best. I would put it in the middle point of worst and best modes. Now, there's only one more game mode left to talk about before we talk about the two worst modes in the game. Hoops is probably my favorite sports mode, but trust me, that alone won't save it from my criticism. In fact, let me preface this, I think Hoops is objectively worse than b-ball. Hoops controls the most normal out of every sports mode. The only way to score points in it is by successfully grabbing your opponent, but the cracks start showing once you realize that this is basically grab spamming hell. For low-level players, grab spamming is a super effective tactic, especially as Ninjara, but at higher levels it becomes one of the most unreliable strategies you can use. So when you apply this to Hoops, it makes for a one-dimensional game mode, and let's face it, grab spamming is not fun to play or fight, and skill-wise, it can end up as a one-sided battle. Another thing to consider is the RNG in play, as sometimes your throws will simply not land in the basket. Really, it doesn't add anything to the game mode. If anything, it just makes it really annoying. Rush meter plays a role as well, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it really depends on how you see it. Since most of the time is spent grab spamming, rush builds up fast, and landing a rush in this mode is an instant 3-pointer because your opponent will always land in the basket regardless of RNG. Fixing this one is a very hard job, so after a while I came up with two pitches that I think can make this mode a bit more fun than just grab spamming. Pitch number 1 is a more traditional basketball game. Much like b-ball, it's focused on a ball and not your opponent. In this pitch, the stage is a bit bigger and we have two baskets, one for each player to score in. You'll have to score by taking the ball into the respective basket and then aiming to score, removing any RNG elements, and adding just pure aim skill. You'll have to do all of this while fighting for control of the ball with your opponent, dealing with any attacks they may throw at you. I think this idea seems the most plausible out of the two, because the game has an unused alternative basketball court and a basketball item. By having Hoops play like this, it would shift the mode from a grab-centric score system to a more skillful speed and evasion-centric game mode. Pitch number 2 consists of a knockback-based mode. Like the first idea, there's a bigger stage and two baskets. This pitch maintains the original concept of the player being the ball, but instead of grabbing to score, every attack will add up to a knockback multiplier. Think of this like Smash Bros for example. This would be something more akin to a traditional fight, but I feel like the gameplay style would be different enough to warrant the existence of the mode. It could probably even have its own meta, as the arms and elements could serve a much different purpose in this play style. Despite how much I like Hoops, I think it does need some fundamental changes to have it be more enjoyable. I really like the ideas I came up with, so please let me know down below which one you liked more, or if there's any changes you'd make to them. Now it's time to talk about what you really came for. I did spoil which modes were considered to be the worst at the start of the video, but I feel like it was still important to talk about everything else to have a better understanding of what works and what doesn't work in ARMS. So without further ado, let's begin the battle for the worst mode. 3-player free-for-all and Skillshot have always been the most polarizing modes to me and many other ARMS fans. The poll I held to determine which of these was the worst mode was held in my community tab and on my Twitter, and on both polls, the results were extremely one-sided, and while my hate for both of these is immense, and I often think the answer to the question is a tie, there's a clear winner here. And 3-player free-for-all completely demolished Skillshot, and if you played a lot of party matches, I'm sure you would agree with this. So now, maybe you might be asking yourself, why are these modes the worst? Why didn't I put X mode or Y mode in the poll as well? Well, these two share similar issues, like the fact that they're completely devoid of any strategy or skill, or that it's very easy to be underpowered without any way of pulling a comeback off. But worst of all, the unrewarding gameplay loop that teaches absolutely nothing to the player. All issues that aren't really as prominent in other modes. So now, let's take a look at our runner-up for worst mode first. Skillshot is straight up on fun in my opinion, and it's not super hard to understand why. Better rename yourself to Fraud Shot because there's no skill required to win this mode. The main way to score points is by hitting all the targets as they come out over a period of time. Hitting your opponent gets you a small point bonus as well. The problem lies with the point multiplier. Getting a combo on the targets can give you a lot of points, and I really mean a lot. And getting knocked down can also lose you a game because your opponent gets all the target points for themselves. If they put themselves into a position where they can knock you down every time the targets come up, they can get point combos extremely fast, leaving you behind. And if you thought Hoop's grab spam was bad, this is 100% worse because you're essentially playing a 3D bullet hell. And even some arms like the vertical multi-shots are useless in this mode, while others like the heavies or the tri-arms work the best. Like I said, it's really easy to lose a round in this mode, and even when you do win, it just feels empty. Comparing it to the other sports modes, this is not like in b-ball where every time the ball explodes, both players have the ability to reset back to neutral, and it's not like Hoops where you at least need basic game skills to win. So what changes do I propose? Well, these might be a bit of a hot take, but I think they would make me actually like this mode. My idea is that, instead of having the players face each other at the same time, we have a mode more akin to the Armgetter, where the objective is to rack up as much points as you can in a set amount of time. Each player would be placed in different courts with the same pattern of targets, and at the end, both scores are compared to decide winners. This idea would actually, funny enough, live to the name of Skillshot, because believe me, getting that Armgetter dev score badge requires a lot of skill and practice. This would not only make for a more competitive mode, but would also teach players the curving mechanics and how your movement can further influence your attack. And now, let's take a look at our winner of the worst mode in ARMS, 3-player free-for-all. And honestly, the reasons as to why this sucks should be extremely clear by now. As I mentioned earlier in the video, having 3 players fight each other in a game like ARMS creates an imbalance where every single match is destined to end in a 2v1, and this is as annoying as it gets for this game. It plays like in 2v2, but when your teammate is killed. It's just so funny how everyone finds themselves trying to avoid this mode in general, and when you do get dragged to it, sometimes the people just prefer not to fight. But let's be serious, this is way better than actually playing the mode. Thanks to the awkward camera system, if you want a fight to work in this game, you need no disruptions from a third party. A 1v1 fight is fun because nobody has an external advantage. A 4-player free-for-all is fun because it doesn't create the need to gang up on someone. But what about the other side of the coin? Sure, it is better being on the attacker side because you do get to play. But is it really worth it? My consensus on 3-player free-for-all is that it's honestly beyond any repair. Not a single change you make to this mode would make it enjoyable, even in Headlock Scramble or with items on. The reason why a game like Smash can pull off a 3-player brawl is because it is a 2D fighting game designed with a lot of moves that can deal with large crowds. So the change I suggest for this mode is to just get rid of it. I don't think anyone is gonna miss it anyways. You've truly earned your spot up here as the worst mode in ARMS, 3-player free-for-all. But what do you guys think? Were we right to crown 3-player free-for-all as the worst mode of ARMS? Or is there another mode you feel would be a good contender for the title of worst? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more ARMS content.